Hello, I am Stephen Parry. Yes, that's how you say it, although it's spelled absolutely ridiculously. I'm sorry about that. It was an idea I had for attention when I was 15 and it caused me a lot of problems all through my life. However, it is Stephen, it's not stiffin or chiffon or stuffing or anything like that. Anyway, welcome to the session. I'm really excited about this session because these sessions never happened when I was young, and I would have drunk them up like nobody's business. I hope today, this next 40 minutes, is going to be as much help to you as I hope it can be. It's not just me going to be talking today. There is four of us here as panelists. I'm going to be your host. I'll introduce each one of the other three in a minute, but let's talk about me first. Um, I was born in northeast Wales, where you weren't meant to stand out. You were meant to blend in with everybody else. So I left as soon as I possibly could. And but at the first day of school, I started asking teachers whether I could organise productions on the Friday, and I did that on the first Friday. That went well. I asked if I could do another one the next Friday. That went on right up until my A levels. I made sure that my hobby became my whole way of life right through school. That took me into drama school. I've then become all sorts of things within the creative industries. And when I say the list, it sounds like I'm being big headed, but I was so hungry to do everything. I think it's a positive. I started off as an actor, I trained as an actor. I then wanted to be a presenter, so I went to do a lot of presenting of telly and radio and still do that. I then wanted to sing, so I ended up on the West End stage in Les Miserables. I then thought I was in productions that I didn't think that were good enough, so I thought I could do better myself. So I started a production company called Mr. Producer, which is much more sensibly spelt than my name. And it was when I started Mr. Producer that I really started to flex what I think was the entrepreneurial muscles in me. And I started to hopefully change the face of many events in Wales. And in fact, I was lucky enough to work on some of the biggest events Wales has ever had. Of course, because of everything and money and COVID didn't even exist then, uh, events slowly became smaller and smaller and smaller. And I've changed direction again. I've become an author, a mentor, a show off, and I've got lots of contacts because I've had fingers in so many pots, which is what I'll be drumming into you for the next 40 minutes. That's me in a nutshell. I'm now going to hand over to Dave, who is going to tell us a little bit about him and how you got to where you are today, Dave, please.
Hello, I'm Dave. I'm currently in my fourth year doing my integrated masters at the University of Bristol. My integrated masters is in music with innovation, which is a bit of an interesting one because we're the only university that does courses like this. So when I was in kind of high school, I was actually I'm a Seren alumnus. Um, so I did all of this stuff.
Tosh.
Yeah, I tell you what, you go to a Russell Group University, you learn a bit of Latin. Um, so so I did a bunch of these a bunch of the Sarin sessions. Figured that originally I wanted to do musical theatre. Realised I didn't exactly have the third of the triple threat. Wasn't a great dancer. Had two left feet. Transpires I've got dyspraxia. So there we go. Realized I wanted to do something more academic. So I, been a musician all my life, parents are music teachers. So decided to do a music degree. Looked everywhere, came to an open day, was like, hang on a second. Bristol have got this slightly strange thing going on where they've got music degrees that also do this weird thing called innovation. And what this innovation thing has turned out to be is kind of my life, and it's effectively doing entrepreneurship and innovation. And what that means is kind of designing the world to be a better place and changing how the world looks and works. And that in and of itself is inherently creative, but it's allowed me to kind of open my mind to see the different ways in which creativity can be applied to so much more of the world, because the creative industries as a sector is worth about 111 billion pounds. Well, before COVID was worth about 111 billion pounds. But outside of that, creative people filter into every other industry in so many important ways, and I think it's really important that we can show people how they can do other stuff with their creative abilities. If they don't succeed in the way they think they're going to, they will always succeed. So that's me.
Thank you, Dave. Abby, welcome to speaking.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, my name's Abby. I'm originally from West Sussex, but I moved to Cardiff in 2014 to do a degree at Cardiff Metropolitan University. So they have Cardiff School of Art and Design there. And my degree was called Artist, Designer, Maker. So I'm a maker. That's what I do now. So I actually run a small sort of making, personalized gifting business, which is building, and I love it. But my main role is still at the university. I actually work in the sort of marketing and external relations team, but specifically with the School of Art and Design. So I normally would be traveling all around the UK, going into art and design classes, A-levels, colleges, and actually talking to you in real life and running workshops and trying to see where you could take your creative practice, develop your skills, build your portfolios, and actually have a conversation. But everything I'm doing right now is online, and doing things like this, which is still great. We can still reach out. But yeah, I have two things that I love. I love people, and I love going out there and encouraging people to be creative. And then I love my own creative practice and building that as well. So kind of tying those two together. But yeah, that's a little bit about what I do.
Thanks, Abby. James.
Hi, so my name is James Lancer. I am a children's book illustrator and animation director and storyboard artist, originally from Cardiff. I now live in London, where I work from home, but with lots of studios in London. I work on mostly picture books for children, and I'm also a storyboarder on an upcoming Netflix show. Yeah, as I said, I'm originally from Cardiff. I was always into drawing and, cartoons and things like that when I was a kid. I dreamt of doing those things when I was younger. I dreamt of being able to, work on one of these animated shows that I used to love so much. And through sort of various paths, I managed to get there. And I studied a foundation degree in UWIC in Cardiff. And then I went on to study illustration and animation in Kingston University in Greater London. And that led me into the creative industries in London. And so I've got some advice about, maybe networking and things like that in the creative industries that hopefully we can get into later.
Great. So that's us four. Before we go to the questions, I just want to pick up on something you said, James, and I think probably we could have all said the same sentence, that you dreamt about doing what you're doing now. I'm a great believer that dreams are totally out of our power. That's why they're called dreams. How did you make it into a reality? What do you think was the most important thing within your character or the way you've gone about things that's actually made it happen for you? Because that's, of course, everybody's listening now, that's their next step. They've got to go from thinking this could be good to this will be good.
I would say this might sound a little bit broad, but I would say it's my creativity and thinking outside of the box. Because to get into a creative industry, it might not be as straightforward as maybe some other industries, but I'd say with your creativity, sometimes you have to think outside the box. Maybe it's a case of, emailing somebody that you might not have thought of, or presenting yourself in a way that, other people wouldn't necessarily present themselves in, and trying to find different routes to the job that you want to. I think Dave said that maybe it doesn't happen exactly the way you thought it would at first, but there are so many routes, and with a little bit of creative thinking, you can sort of take a step back, reassess, and find another way to that dream. And I think that's kind of what's always kept me going. When one thing didn't work, I just took a step back, thought, is there another way that I can get there? And yeah, and that's kind of how I did it.
And also, what you just said then, if it was as simple as it happened in the way that we expected it, everybody'd be successful and everybody'd be doing it. And probably us four would be out of work because everybody else would have got there first. And another thing you said that sometimes sends me crazy is that we talk about thinking out the box. I've never heard of anybody wanting to think inside the box, because I just think inside the box is a pleasant way of saying try a little bit harder and think differently. So I'm a great believer is there's one person stopping you from doing anything, and if you actually think that through and think what the answer is rather than just go, yes, it's only me, and actually think that's what you've done. Is that what you did, Abby? How did you make how did you make that flip from dreaming or wanting to be it like James and then making it happen?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I always loved my art and design subjects in school. I did a foundation actually down in Worthing near Brighton. And I just, very similar, it's just sort of approaching things and actually being open to opportunities. That's kind of the really interesting thing. When I was younger, I thought it was kind of the academic, I had to do this A level and I had to do that, and that would just get me to where I wanted to go. But most of the opportunities that have come my way are from talking to people and getting to know other creatives, actually following different pathways. A bit out of my comfort zone and I wasn't too sure about it, but I went for it. And it's things like doing exhibitions with my lecturers that I was terrified because I didn't think I was good enough. But then I met someone there, and then you get a commission, and it just sort of rolls on and you build that network. So I think open mind is definitely the approach that's kind of followed me throughout the years.
And the fact that you said you did something that terrified you. I don't know anybody that's highly successful that's ever kept within their comfort zone. Those are the people that usually whinge and say, I wish I'd done this when I was younger. So
Yeah,
I'm glad
definitely.
you brought that word up, because we do have to step outside our comfort zones, because that's the same thing as thinking inside the box, which is not really thinking thinking it through creatively. There are so many different ways of getting anywhere on a map, just like there is in your career. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting you should say that, because it's not just doing something that terrifies you. It's about recognizing what it is that you are in fact afraid of. And if you look at the base of most of this, what most people are afraid of is the fear of failing. And what people don't realize is that you will only achieve your dream by having failed about 20 or 30 or 40 times.
Yeah.
And those failures are microscopic, or they're macroscopic. But frankly, if you can fail small, fast, you'll learn a lot more quickly, and it will be a lot more painless than if you're failing over a long period of time. That's that's the thing you should be afraid of doing. But you shouldn't be afraid of just putting yourself out there. I think that's how all of this kind of coalesces. This success comes together. There's also something in there as well about having the scope for your dreams to change, because it's kind of like when you start opening doors, you might find the door that you didn't know you were looking for that's connected to the door that you thought you'd opened, that's actually far better for you, and it's a far better end point in life for you than where you first started. Like I started out wanting to do musical theatre, and through a winding path of creative decisions and liking solving problems for people, I've wound up applying for consulting jobs, because actually that's what I'm passionate about. It's really interesting, that flexibility too.
What does my head in, and one thing that you've said, and it's not you that's doing my head in, is this fear of failure that generally I think everybody has, but then 99% of people choose to fail to begin with because they're scared of failing, which doesn't make any mathematical sense or rationale at all. So I always try and tell people, if you're scared of failing, just accept that and
Yeah.
try and fail, because otherwise you've already failed and you've got
Yeah.
nowhere to go to.
I
That's
usually
the
say if
bonkers
something
thing about it.
Oh, sorry.
No, go
I
on.
usually say if something seems scary, then it usually means you're probably on the right track. If you're nervous about doing something, it usually means that that's probably going to be something new. It probably means it's going to be something that's going to
Absolutely.
push you outside that comfort zone,
Yeah.
and it's going to challenge you.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure everyone here would agree that
Yeah.
when you're being challenged, that's when your creativity can really flourish and take you in different directions.
Absolutely bang on the money there, because when I do a lot of mentoring one-to-ones at the moment on Zoom, but I have done them to hundreds of people at a time or groups of students or whatever. And I've always tried to teach and explain that feeling of that just going over the precipice of the roller coaster is actually your adrenaline of your body getting ready, because you need to pull up your socks and do something and nail something. But 90% of us just hold on to that dread feel and use that as an excuse to opt out. And that's why people don't turn up to exams, don't turn up to a date, don't turn up for a driving test, just don't turn up in life, because they think they've got this horrendous anxiety constantly in their stomachs. And a lot of that time, that is that hormone that makes the magic happen. Once I talk to my adrenaline, when I'm feeling nervous in my stomach, I talk to my stomach and say, come on, fill me up, because that is your petrol, that is your diesel. And I think probably from what you're saying, we four, although we don't know each other and probably never met each other, we four of us have recognized that awful feeling isn't really bad news. It's really good news, and we've got to listen to it. Anyway, we've got to listen to some questions, and so have you. So get ready. This is the first question. I've got a whole list here. I'm sure we won't get through them all, but a lot of them cover the same sort of thing. How do I find unique opportunities that will give me an advantage when applying to jobs in the creative industry? Abby, I'm going to come to you first. And
Yeah,
just
no
to
problem.
explain, Dave and James, if you are the third person that's going to be answering this and it's already been answered, feel free to say, I have nothing more to add, and I'll come to you first the next time, which will make it much fairer. Abby.
Yeah, of course. So unique opportunities. I think the key word here is unique, because there are going to be opportunities that will come your way naturally through doing the courses that you're currently doing. But actually, like we've just said, is being open-minded, thinking outside the box. For me, when I was choosing my degree pathway, I looked for things like placement years. Do they offer live briefs and live projects so I could actually get involved with industry through my course? And also, we had loads of seminars with people coming in from various industries. And every single time someone came in and delivered a talk, I would try my best to make sure I'd go up, ask them questions, let them know who I was, find out who they are, and then build that network around myself. And then eventually you can reach back out to those people and go in different directions within the creative industry. So I do think it is about putting yourself out there, and it is about kind of soaking things up, even if, for example, I'm not a kind of a massive ceramicist, but I went along to some ceramics lectures and met someone, and then they ended up being a fantastic contact that's got me into different pathways in terms of running my own business. So I do think it's about kind of going to different things, talking to people, and building that really strong network around yourself.
Brilliant. James, have you got anything to add to that?
I would sort of jump off that and say, the big part of it is, like who you know and who you can meet. Like Abby said, that is a big part of, broadening your sort of like creative options. But I'd also say like the internet is an amazing thing that, and there's so much information on there right now. You could have an Instagram account, showcasing your art, showcasing your acting, doing little skits, doing little characters. You could be jumping on YouTube And there's so much information out there, and like masterclasses and things like that online that, you know, for example, I can only really speak about the industry that I'm in, but for example, storyboarding, like that's something that so many people want to get into. And when I was younger, I had no idea how the process even worked about storyboarding for a cartoon. But now there is so many like online classes you can take, so many tutorials on YouTube, so many storyboarders working on like top Cartoon Network shows, top Disney shows, top Netflix shows, you know, putting rough boards out on Twitter and stuff. And you can just, now you can jump online and just see all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that can prep you in a way that, you know, I didn't have that option when I was, you know, learning. That's a great opportunity.
Great. Dave, have you got anything more to add to that?
Just one tiny, like, not addendum, but like reinforcement of what Abby was saying.
Oh, there's another Latin word.
Oh, sorry. It's just kind of, they just flow out of me now. That's more being a student of music, to be fair. But no, the thing is, it's if you want a unique opportunity, yes, I would definitely say, you know, for any opportunity, go and do anything that you see possible and absorb everything. But if you want something unique, which is what people are really, really struggling to find these days, it's that notion of just talking to people. And I think, you know, people are starting to forget how to talk to people in real life now, because so much of the world happens and exists online that you forget that people want to be talked to. It's a natural instinct of human beings to be social and to want to be talked to. And so people actually fear talking to someone else that is of a higher standing than them, because they're like, oh, well, I don't they didn't follow me on Twitter, so I don't have the you know, the right to talk to them. And I think what really kind of you've got to remember is that those people love being talked to. Those people love telling their story and, you know, getting other people excited by it. And if you go up to someone, you talk to someone, and then you find something that's a connection between something that you've both done or you're both interested in, you build that unique interpersonal connection that they'll remember you by. And if they need you or if they want you, and we're not talking the big people in the world, I'm talking even as little as your lecturers, stuff like that. Have a good relationship with your lecturers in uni. Like, I've got a great relationship with one of my lecturers. She got me my first IT consulting client, because she was like, you know, IT stuff, you can do some cool creative stuff with this guy. Here's a job, and it's paid me quite well through a pandemic. And it's tiny things like that that only come about when you talk to people. So talk to people.
And they are not tiny things, are they? They may seem to tiny things. You know, you could be talking to the lady next door. Well, in fact, I did speak to the lady next door, and the next minute I'm doing some promotional work for her son's company in New York. That is a fact.
The lady next door to me, I found out the other day is in charge of distributing the vaccine across Bristol. So, you know, it's about who you don't know who you live next to until you talk to them.
And there's the word networking has got a bit of a negative edge to it, because some people, for example, with my character think, oh, Stephen loves networking. No, I don't. I put a networking face on and a networking hat on, and I go and do it. Nobody likes to walk into a pub by themselves first, not because they're not going to have to buy the round. I'm not talking about that. But nobody likes that confrontation. But you just have to go out and do it. I joined a Zoom the other week that I was invited to, and I think looking back, I was invited to by mistake. But they asked us to explain what we were doing, and I said now I was doing a lot of mentoring in self-confidence and motivation and blah, 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 blah. 10 minutes in, I realized I was not even meant to be on this Zoom, and I apologized for being there, and I got a client from it. And that client has kept me. I've done about 8 sessions with her, and I was in the wrong room. So, and a lot of these questions, I can see by the time we're not going to get through a lot of these questions, but a lot of them are to do with networking. And I always try to tell people, if you think, for example, oh, it's all right for them, they can do it, I can't, you're just keeping within your comfort zone and thinking inside your box and you're not stepping one foot out because they don't like it no more than anybody else. One very quick story, which I think speaks volumes. Years ago, I set up a networking forum in Cardiff because I didn't like the ones that existed, and I felt they were very stuffy and they made people feel very awkward on the way in. So I had some nice music in the background. Everybody was handed a drink as they got in the door. I introduced everybody to somebody, and then I heard that there was this young girl who was just starting out and that she was so scared she couldn't come out of the car. And I went and I held her hand and I took her in and I gave her a drink and introduced her to some people. Cut to 8 years later, I'm on a Seren conference and I'm introducing this lady, and she starts to tell a story about the importance of networking, and she starts to tell me of how she was at a networking event and she was too scared to go in, and this man dragged her in. I didn't even realize she was going to say that, and now she runs a fantastic company called Career Cake. She's Amy, her name is. careercake.com is the name of the website, and she is such a successful business lady. And she puts that thanks to the fact that I dragged her through that door. So that proves to me that if she hadn't gone through that door, probably her business wouldn't even exist now. And it is, you just got to get through that door or onto that Zoom, even if it's a wrong one. Anyway, let's get to some more questions. Right, okay. How do you innovate good ideas into a reality? I'm going to start with you, James, first.
Wow. Okay. So I think it's a big part of that is trial and error. I wouldn't say you have a great idea, you sit down, smash it out, there you go, you've got a winning product on your hand, you've got a great drawing on your hand, you've got a great bit of music. It's you try, you do all right, but there's some problems with it. You try again, maybe there's different problems with it next time, but some things you got right. It's just a case of just keep practicing, keep doing what you're doing, whether that be acting, whether that be music, whether that be art, whether that be, making product. You just got to keep trying. And there, as Dave said and as Abby said earlier, like there will be moments when these things don't seem like they're working, but that usually means that you're just working out the problems, and through those problems you get better. I would say you don't just sit down and just come out with a masterpiece your first time around. That doesn't happen to anybody.
No. Dave?
As a student of innovation of 3.5 years, I've been trying to work out the answer to this question. There isn't really no. This question is slightly tricky, worded in a slightly tricky way. So let me break it down into 3 separate parts. Firstly, where do good ideas come from? Right. Good ideas, people often think of the light bulb moment, the aha moment. That doesn't exist in the way you think it exists. Ideas don't just drop out of thin air. And I repeat, they do not just drop out of thin air. They come from various different places. There's a really good book called Where Do Good Ideas Come From by a guy called Stephen Johnson, which you should read if you want to create something good. But the thing I like to think of is called the slow hunch. This idea that if you immerse yourself in a world that there's a problem in, but you don't quite know what it is, eventually something will hit you because you've been thinking about it for so long, and that's what the light bulb moment is. The second thing is, how do you innovate? A very short answer to a complicated question is you effectively create something that's novel for an audience that is qualified to know that it's valuable. Very, very difficult to explain what that means, and I could talk about it for hours, but I won't. And then the third part of that question is really, how do you bring a good innovative idea to life in a sustainable, scalable way? And that's what goes back to what James is saying, is that you can't do it by thinking about it for ages. Another great book called The Lean Startup that everyone should read is basically says this idea of these things, this thing called the build, measure, learn feedback loop, which is in order to create something great, you have to actually create it. And then to make it great, you have to learn from feedback from people that you're talking to, from customers or whatever it is, people might be, your audience. and by measuring that, and then when you learn from it, then you rebuild it in a better way. And really good things only come to life when, as James is saying, you work on them and work on them and work on them, and when they come from a place of authenticity.
Great. Abby?
I mean, that was just incredible. I completely agree with everything you've both said. It's brilliant. I think for me, definitely all of the above. But as a maker, I work through materials. So I would approach a project in quite a hands-on way and go in with the experiments and keep trying. And sometimes the best outcomes come from failures and things that I didn't expect. And also something that a lecturer once said to me was, this is a really random one, but sometimes this works, is the Disney concept, which is where you get a module, you get a brief, and you think of the craziest ideas, like what would be the craziest, best thing I could possibly do with this project? Like money's not an issue, nothing's an issue. And then you work from there and you think, okay, how can we actually make this happen? What can we actually do? And then you go in, you experiment, you try things, and you just build it up from there. And don't try and think about it too much, because when you start doing that, you'll end up not doing anything. So that's sort of my approach as well.
One thing I learned as a creative was I always seemed to think that I had a very original idea, and I had to learn that there are very few original ideas. The only originality comes from is how you go about it and how it is developed, which is basically what you're saying. But when I was a young budding entrepreneur, I used to go around telling everybody what a brilliant original idea I had. Instead of actually trying to make it happen, I was getting off on the talking about it and thinking that something special had come to me. And I slowly learned that it wasn't special until I'd rolled it out and maybe failed or succeeded with it. And the only way you do that is through development. And that was a really, really tough one. But it's development, isn't it? That you've got to. I've had even ideas stolen from me, and I've never really worried because I knew the people that were taking them from under my nose, they wouldn't roll them out or develop them in the right way, and it hadn't come from the best place in the beginning, and they failed. Hurrah! Next question, which may be the last one because we haven't got long. What are your tips for being auditioned? Now, I can talk about auditions because I've had so many of them, but it's interviews as well, because I think networking and interviewing and all that are all over this page of questions I've got. I'm going to come to you, Abby, first. Either you can talk about it within the realm of auditions or interviews, or you know the essence of the question.
Definitely, yeah. So my experience is for sure with art and design interviews. I run portfolio building and interview workshops with students. And the key words, I mean, you're hearing very similar words today, but development is absolutely key. A lot of people will approach a portfolio for a university interview with a bit of the wrong mindset. They might think, oh, this needs to look like a professional, sleek portfolio with all my best work. But that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for who you are as a creative person and how do you think. We want to see the mind maps, the sketches, the ideas, the lead up to those outcomes, because that's what we can really talk about in an interview. And then when you do get to that interview, bring your confidence. Just, go in with your best shot. Don't kind of misuse that opportunity. You need to really go for it. But a really great tip, which I think quite a few people might overlook, is you do need to know the work that you're bringing. A lot of people will actually just put pieces in as a filler because it looks nice, it kind of fits on that page. But actually you can be asked about anything in your interview and you need to be able to talk through it properly. So definitely try and kind of do a little practice, get someone to talk through the portfolio with you and actually be prepared. That's the key thing from me.
Great, Abby. Dave?
I'll talk 2 points. I could talk about auditions because obviously I prepped for this, but all of my good friends are in kind of theatrical spaces, and then I'll just do a brief note to add on to something that Abby was saying. In terms of auditions, I'm going to talk from a theatrical perspective. So I'm thinking you'll need to have monologue, you'll need to prepare some sort of musical rep, right? Pick a monologue that someone else isn't going to be doing. Do something that you can gender bend stuff. You can be careful with intersectionality, but there are other things you can do with strange monologues. Go hunting for stuff. There are some really, really great books that I've got them on my shelf, but I can't go and grab them because the headphones will fall off. There's some really great books you can find, monologue books. Do something unique. Same thing, and more importantly, same thing goes for whatever pieces of musical theatre or opera or whatever it is that you're preparing. Don't sing On My Own. Don't sing. Don't sing Habanera from Carmen. Don't sing anything that is like a pop hit. Don't sing anything you'd hear on classical FM, right? Because you're never going to sing it as well as someone they've already heard singing it, and it will ruin you. In terms of interviewing, to add on to what Abby was saying, I agree with everything she said. To the point of development, it's about showing what you. The interview panel only care about the outcome of the stuff that you've produced and what that means for you and actually where you're at right now because of the stuff that you've done. Show them the stuff that you've done. Tell them what happened and why you did it, and now tell them the so what, and actually more so make that so what, and so what can you do, what can I do for you? If it's a company you're interviewing for, you go, okay, because of all of this stuff I've done, this is what I can now do for you. This is why you should spend 20, 30, 40 grand on a year on me, right? Alternatively, this is why you should spend your time educating me, and know that, then you'll fly through life.
James.
Okay, I've got a couple of things to say on this subject. I'd say if you're interviewing to go into university and portfolio review, one thing I would try and keep in mind is that, tutors and things like that, they're not looking for finished product. They're not looking for a professional illustrator. They're not looking for a professional artist already. They're looking for somebody with potential. So that's kind of what you need to show them, is that you've got sparks of ideas. They might not be the most beautiful things in the world, but there's a creative kernel there that can blossom into something so much better, and that's what they'll be hoping to find, are those people that have got the potential to be that finished product at the end of their 3 years or however long you study for. And another thing is, don't forget about being, don't focus so much on your portfolio or your work that you forget to just connect with them as people, because that matters so much. You, like Dave said earlier, and like Abby said, you want to have these connections with your lecturers, and they want to see these people that have these personalities that they can gel with and vibe with. So yeah, don't be so focused on your work that you can't, you forget to sort of present yourself. And one thing finally I would say is just having I did A-levels, double A-level in art, and I could have gone straight to university with that, but I chose to do a foundation degree, and that was the best I ever made, because it gave me this space to try out different forms of art, give me a whole year just to sort of some space to just focus on my creativity and figure out what I wanted to do. And I went into that foundation year wanting to be a fine artist, and I came out of it applying for illustration degrees. And so I would highly recommend doing a foundation, even if you think that you don't need one. It's such a great year that you just get to play around for a year with different things, and it's so valuable.
Brilliant. I know as a mentor, I've mentored people that have gone through to X Factor finals, drama schools, chief execs who have to do a lot of talking on the radio or telly, and people who are consumed with a lot of nerves. And I was talking earlier about the adrenaline, and just one practical thing before we wrap this session up. One practical thing for you guys who are listening in now and watching. Yes, you need to fill yourself with adrenaline, but you also need control, because adrenaline can send you right through the roof. And what happens to us all when we get what I call our knickers in a twist, when we get a little bit hyped with the adrenaline, is that our breathing goes. And when our breathing goes, we can start to jabber. We can start to say things that we didn't mean to. We can start to not hear because we've got so much fuel. We're in this juggernaut and we don't have the brakes. And the brakes that we need for that control is our breathing, our lungs. And we need to breathe right down into our bellies. And what I tell everyone is whether it's a Zoom interview, whether you're meeting them face to face, whatever, you need to prepare yourself and this before going in and get your heart rate down, get your blood pressure down, get your sweating down. And what I do when I do a lot of slow breathing is that I try and wipe everything out of my head, even what I've got to remember for the interview, so that it just clears your mind so that when you go in, you have got enough fuel, you've got control, you've got clarity, and you are able to show them the best version of you that day. And that can be magic, because I will put my house on it that there have been 12 people before you that have gone in going with this face, and those don't usually get the gigs. Listen, thank you both three of you, Dave, James, and Abby. Thank you so much. Sadly, we've got to wrap this up. I hope that's been a great help to you. I've learned a lot today, and I'm 58, although I know I only look 22. Thanks very much. Good luck in what you do, and remember, there's only one stopping you from doing anything at all in the world, and that's yourself. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Well, noson, what an insightful evening it's been. A diolch yn fawr. Thank you to Stephen and the Creative Industries panel for sharing your experiences. Profiadau gwerth I clywed. Gobeithio chi fwynhau heddiw, a'ch bod yn ysu am fwy. I do hope you've enjoyed the first day of the National Seren Academy Conference and have found it inspiring, that you are ready for even more tomorrow. Brynhawn fory, tomorrow afternoon, we'll see you back here at 2 for another selection of masterclasses. Ac yna fi nos, in the evening, we'll hear more about the summer schools planned for 2021. Cyffroes. A big thanks, diolch yn fawr iawn, to all the amazing university partners and Seren alumni for sharing their insights with us today. I look forward to seeing our Seren students back here tomorrow afternoon, prynhawn fory amdani fyfyrwyr, and I do hope that our Seren students, parents, carers and teachers will rejoin us tomorrow evening. Felly diolch yn ôl am fwy nos y fory for more information, advice and guidance. A chyhoeddiad arbennig and an exciting announcement about the 2021 summer school opportunities. Until tomorrow, tan hynny felly, nos da. Good night.